We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here's your host, Michael Storm.
Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me. It is true. I am Michael Storm. This is Toward Anarchy. And wow, as always, it is a pleasure to be here. It's an extra pleasure to be here this week because, well, I'm still alive. I survived the cold snap. We were down negative double digits for quite a bit of last week here in Kansas, and it was challenging. Not as challenging as it was in some other places because we're used to weather that's that bad or close to that bad. It sounds like it was a bit of a nightmare in some places in the nation, including the home base for Republic Broadcasting here in Texas, just suffering some of the worst of it, at least by all the stories in the news and in the press and everything about the governor taking off after a panel and people who control the energy there, and just every thought about it, everything from it being about them having to purchase gas from different places and in different markets and it costing more, to the environmental impact. There's some question about whether the current head of such things in the great state of Texas is responsible for causing some of the problem by not allowing them to, I guess he's head of the EPA or something like that, their version of it there in Texas, and he didn't allow them to use the extra output to produce the extra pollutants under the EPA guidelines or whatever to be able to increase the power output. There's a bunch of different things I read. It was hard to keep up with this, such a big story. Everybody everywhere is just sort of talking about it, and it's hard to know exactly what's true and what's not, except for to ask people on the ground. And, well, everybody I know is still alive. They survived it. Power has come back on after some period of time, and managed to get through it, but it doesn't sound like everybody was necessarily so lucky. I guess that's the problem with anecdotal evidence such as everybody I know is still alive. Like, share, follow, subscribe, go to towardanarchy.com. And that's the easiest way to follow along, to keep up with what's going on. And if you're there, it's really easy to do that like, share, follow, subscribe thing if you just copy the link or just click one of those buttons that's there right about the middle of the page. It's always right there floating in there somewhere. You can share directly to Facebook and Twitter, and then there's a bunch of other things that you can do as well, including email and some a bunch of places I've never heard of. But I just think the button is great, and it's just easy. It's really easy to plug in everywhere. I try to make it as easy as possible to take that second to like, share, follow, subscribe, whatever platform you're on, wherever you're at, and you want to now, because I've been excited, looking forward to this for a long time. It's taken a while for it to happen, and believe me, I've been working on it, but it's happened. I was delivered this week several dozen copies of Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. These are courtesy of the Mises Institute there in Auburn, Alabama. Fantastic hardbound copies of it. Not even the little floppy soft ones that they used to give away. This is a $20 book, and they donated them to the show so that I can give them out on the show to spread good economic thought throughout my little world. We just discussed that. So I will give away. I will be giving away copies of this. Producer Ken says he was stuck in the studio until Tuesday. And Julie still doesn't have power and won't come back to work, and hasn't come back to work. I'm sorry, not won't. Mike and Julie couldn't get to the studio, and I couldn't drive out 7 shifts in a row. Wow. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, those old school days back at doing the DJ thing and just wanting to. You had to. Yeah, yeah. They do that thing where I can play 50 hours of records in a row, or they're 3 days worth of records, or yeah, absolutely. And just as a broadcaster myself, I know personally that I would take 8-hour long shifts, and trust me, 8 hours is long for a studio shift. It's or longer. Just I'll be here. No, he can't come in. Sure, I'll take his shift. You bet. Just trying to get in the door to be on the air as much as you possibly could. So, but this isn't quite the same thing. I've been snowed in here. No lunch breaks and probably can't get a pizza delivered. That's not great. So I would do you a favor. I'd at least run a previous show or something. I'll let you stick it, and then you have a couple of hours to try to figure out how to feed yourself. You know what I did? That's what I did. I walked off and they didn't get my yeah. Yeah, I know you pull a big weekend. I'm chatting with producer Ken about geeky radio stuff. Yeah, I know there's a kid. That's great. That's wonderful that you actually can. But then you have to do the dishes. That's the problem with that. We always had kitchens and everything in the studio as well, but you have to clean up after yourself. So I would never use it. I don't want to clean up after myself in somebody else's space. I don't want to clean up after myself in my own space, but I do. TowardAnarchy.com. You see, my guest today is John Bush. He's a local. He's right there in the network's backyard and has been for years as an activist and a speaker and an entrepreneur. And we will have a conversation with him. We'll talk about the Great Reset. I haven't brought it up much. It's a topic of much conversation around the world in different circles, and some people believe it's nefarious, and, well, depending on how you take to read some of the things that the people who are a part of it put together and they say and the results of the things that they do and things that they've said in the past, you have to wonder. The Greater Reset, we'll talk to him about that. We'll talk to him about Freedom Cells Network as well. But I intend to ask him about Bitcoin, and then, as always, he's shared some links. I share some links. If you go to TowardAnarchy.com, you look for February 21st. There's a couple of links that he specifically wanted me to share. There's one for his show. He's a broadcaster. He does his own thing. He's speaking and activisting and just all the time trying to put out a good message out there. And so we shared a link to his Live Free Now show. It's Live Free Now with John Bush. It's news and views and tips. This actually should have a quote around it now that I think about it, because I took that directly from the page. I was being lazy. News, views, tips, and tools you can use to live a free, prosperous, and healthy life. And then the other one that you might be interested in there, the free ounce of Kratom.com. And we'll ask John about that as well. I am ignorant of Kratom. It's not something that I've partook of, and we'll have to ask him about it. I shared a couple other links there as well. Digital mobs and the power they wield will continue to grow in size and frequency. I thought this was pretty important because this all goes together with everything that's happening constantly right now, and everything that's happening politically and socially across the board, anything that's making the news, the cancel culture, the riot, the whatever it was at the Capitol, and other examples of it, not just in America but throughout the world, where digital mobs, the use of not just people ganging up on people digitally, like with the Gina Carano thing that has just happened here. Over the last few months, we've followed the story, and that's just one of the, but actual sort of using the digital space to group together to create a real activism, real action. In this case, they're speaking of it in particularly negative effects. They're ignoring all of the positive grouping. This is something that happens across the board with the internet. It's something that I've tried to talk about and tried to make some sense about, and try to give some perspective to people, because there's this constant narrative that the internet is a bad thing, that social media is a bad thing. There's this underlying thought or ideology across it that tries to corrupt the technology because of the way that people use it. This is a constant argument throughout the show. The use of tools versus the fact that a tool exists, or the perceived use of it in the case of the internet. The problem with the internet is because the negativity is so glaring, it really overshadows the notion, the reality. It's absolutely a reality that there's so much more good that comes out of the internet, just as there's so much more good that comes from us being together and interacting together and getting along voluntarily as a society. It functions the same way on the internet. It's no different. We have the exact. It's just a microcosm. It might be the bigger thing now. It might not be the micro. It might be the macro anymore. More people participate in the internet than they do in life in a lot of cases. But the participation is still the same. It's still down to the individual. It's not about these tools. And so there seems to be this constant confusion, or at least the appearance that the internet is just constantly used for negative things, and that there's nothing good that comes out of it. And it's just not true. And specifically of the social media and the getting together, you talk about the possibility that the social media was used by somebody like an Alex Jones or some other right-wing group or something. I know his name popped up in conjunction with the Capitol and all that happened here a few weeks back, just this week, as well as others, including Roger Stone, some other people, just some names that popped up, and of course the suggestion is that these people and their views have caused people to gather in places like Parler and other places across the internet to plot to change the world, and it's true. It's absolutely true that people have, and part of the reason that has happened is because they're being chased into corners of the internet. The closer you get to Parler, the closer you get to 4chan. If you're not understanding the way the internet works, and the closer you get to 4chan, the closer you get to Onion, the closer you get to what's known as the dark web. And the association is the further right that you go, that's where you go to find things. Well, as somebody who's actually been out there on that, there's plenty of hate to go around within that dark web and in those places where they don't moderate conversation. You have no idea, if you don't understand what the chans are like, and they're pretty mild too in all respects, because they get hounded by the government and they get hounded by the people that host them, because they get hounded by the government. And so there's some level of moderation through the thing, and by moderation I mean of people moderating it and controlling it to keep some things keep some things from being posted up there. You take that level off and you go to the next level, and you imagine it's there. It's on the internet. It's as bad as you've ever said, or excuse me, as you've ever thought. There's no question about it. But you're pushing, these people are there because they can't have these conversations in other places. And then you run into all these things that pop up that are new laws that go along with the internet that are happening. You think it happens? You think Godwin's law is busted, is broken, is proved, however you want to state it, across the internet and the social media and in normal places? The word Nazi is thrown around in the darker web. It's as useful in their conversation and their language there as any other conjoining or connecting or descriptive word. I guess that's really the only way I can put it. It's a bad, mean, nasty thing, and this comes from the so-called normal social media platforms like the Facebook and the Twitter not letting these people speak their voice and have their space. It's a weird thing, because you can actually, if you use your social media right, and you can group up, you can go over here and talk to these people about the things you want and not worry about somebody offending somebody or somebody who's not wanting to see that be there. Part of the reasons that you wouldn't see the disgusting things and the nasty people that are available in that dark net, or just the Chan area of the internet, is because you don't go there. And you know why you don't go there? Because you know there's nothing that you want to see or hear there. And that works in the social media too, in the normal places. This works everywhere. This works in real life. This is this greater conversation about letting people speak their mind and be who they are, and letting them do so loudly and vociferously so that everyone around them knows and hears and gets who and what they are about, so that there's no question. The people that want that sort of thing, they'll be attracted to it. But most of us won't. Most of us are still out here in the norm, just hanging out with everybody. We're not particularly weird or different from each other. I guess I have a minute to do that, speaking about different or weird or hating on individuals and people, particularly people with different voices. Rush Limbaugh died this last week, and of course, as a radio guy, I know who Rush Limbaugh is. When I was coming up in radio, you were trying to be Rush Limbaugh, or you were trying to be the local jock on the local rock station, or you were trying to be this Howard Stern or something like that. And that's what everybody chased after. And so, of course, I've listened to Rush Limbaugh over the years, off and on. And you know from listening to me, and you know who Rush is that I'm not particularly fond of the guy, but I don't necessarily have a problem with him either. He's just another guy with a voice. He's no different than anyone. He had lots of opinions, and many of them were wrong. He's definitely flawed and hypocritical, certainly when it came to drugs. And this is a problem with most political people, is whether it's on the left or the right. And that's what's funny about sort of left-wing people bashing Rush Limbaugh this past week, is that they're all very hypocritical on issues. It's not a good for the goose, good for the gander sort of thing, and that Rush Limbaugh had that problem, and it's obvious because he had that platform to express his opinion, whether you liked it or not, or whether it was good or bad, that made him fair game for it. But I was not a fan. I never wanted to be Rush Limbaugh. I appreciate, other than a guy who's successful in radio and a broadcaster, and people are listening to him. As far as personal political views, I didn't align with the guy that much, and I'm not a fan. But I wish him, rest in peace. I don't wish the guy any more ill will than I necessarily wish anybody on the planet who isn't, I have to say, aligned with my thought. I can't say right, because it's not. That's my opinion on things, and it may be the right opinion, but I can say it better, and I can make it more palatable for the listener to accept that I'm open to the idea that what I see and what I think are not perfect things, even though they are. Oh, it's so bad. Hey, John Bush is coming up. We got about 10 minutes until he joins the conversation. Stick around. Toward Anarchy. I will, a little bit later in the show, after John Bush leaves us, I will give away a copy or two of Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. You know what? It is a perfect message. It is a perfect message. Even if I and Henry Hazlitt and many, many others are not perfect messengers, it's still a perfect message, as I was hinting at as we ran off into the break. But later on in the show, after John leaves us, we'll give away a couple here on the air, and then I'm giving them away across the social media all the time. Just be looking out for a chance. All you have to do is like and share, follow, subscribe, all those things that I talk about on the show every week. That make it possible, because it is you guys liking and sharing and following and subscribing. I have these. It's neat to watch the little pockets of people in their different places, whether it's the people on Castbox that listen to almost every single episode, or it's like YouTube is like that as well. Only have just these sort of small followings in a couple of these little places like that, but they're rabid. They watch every single episode. It's really great. Or listen, as the case may be. I've given up on the camera thing. I don't do that anymore. It's not a video show. It's not a TV show. It's a radio show, and so I'm just not even doing it. If special occasion or something like that, like I had. I was trying. I even busted out the lights. I have my studio lights. I had all that, and it was going for a while. And I was it's too much hassle. I had to get out and I set all that stuff up again, and not worry about it. I just get here, turn on the microphone, say the things, do the things, talk to the people, and do it again next week and the week after and the week after. John Bush is coming up. If you go to towardanarchy.com, look for February 21st. You will see that he is an activist, a speaker. He's an entrepreneur. He's many, many things. We'll talk to him about Kratom. We'll talk to him about Bitcoin. We'll talk to him about the Greater Reset and the Freedom Cells Network that he's involved with. We'll find out what those things are about. And, of course, there's links up there for you to be able to support John and follow him as well. And I told you about the digital mobs. There was also, I mentioned the thing about Texas and the problems that they're having there at the home base for the network with the power outages and just the management of their electricity across the board there during the cold snap. And one of the stories that I had come across was just about that. There was just so many of them out there, and this was just specifically about Governor Abbott calling out all the board, the managers, the Texas power managers that are there. It's funny because everybody had something to say about it everywhere, and it became this thing where people were shaming people from Texas because they don't own coats and they weren't, and their infrastructure apparently wasn't prepared. Because I said, what is this? How often does that happen in Texas? This cold snap was pretty extreme even for Kansas. Let's see. That's 6. I bet we had one cold snap that was like that in the 6 or 7 years that I've been back here in Kansas. So once a decade kind of thing, maybe twice if it falls at the extreme ends of the decade. I don't know. In private domestic affairs and the management of estates and in the conservation of bodily health, every man may consider what suits his own convenience and follows what course he likes best. John Locke said that. What's that? Was that John right there? I'm still trying to get connected with John right here to make sure. Got the little wave. I'll have to say hello. And as always, I do this. I don't always talk about it, but I always share a little meme image or something up there just because it's fun. And this one just made me laugh. It's called Bootlicker Bingo, and so it's the bingo squares, and it's about sort of statist excuses. We talked about them before. I think that was it last week. I made the joke about the worst thing about statists is the excuses that they make. the death and the theft that they're making the excuses for. There's that, but it's the excuses. And this was just basically a list of excuses for police behavior and the things that authoritarians do. Just a bad apple. The officer has a family to get home to. The suspect tried to run. If you haven't worn a badge, you can't criticize. The officer used minimum necessary force over and over. The whole thing is filled like that. You have to go to towardanarchy.com, look for February 21st, and you will find it there. John Bush is my guest. He's up next. towardanarchy.com, and look for February 21st if you want to follow along. You'll see that my guest is John Bush. He's an activist, a speaker. He's an entrepreneur. We brought him here for the conversation because you asked me to. This is one of these people that when I've reached out to the fans, the followers, the friends on the social media and said, who should I be talking to? What subject should I be covering? I can't do it all. I can't think of it all every single time myself. Where are my blind spots? Some names came up. John Bush was one of those that came up repeatedly. And it's great because he's there in Texas, and he's right in the backyard of the network, so I thought there's that connection there. Many, many reasons to just have this conversation. One of these people that I've followed for a number of years on the social media. He was doing this thing for a while where he was driving around living off of Bitcoin and driving across the nation and talking to people about Bitcoin and really sort of buying a hot dog for a Bitcoin and looking back on it now may seem a bit crazy, but at the time he was one of the first people that was proving that you could use this blockchain technology, the Bitcoin technology, as a functional economic tool. And so it was really neat to do. And so it was really great to have him on the show for a conversation. John Bush, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Hey, thanks for having me, Michael.
Yeah, man. Like I said, it was one of those things where I'm talking to the people, and they're, this is who you should be talking to. He's doing great work. You work with Derek Bros. You guys are seriously, people who for many years have put your money literally where your mouth is when it comes to these things that you truly practice. When you said, I think Bitcoin's a thing, I'm going to go out and prove it, and you did, and that's it's kind of a rare thing these days, I think.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of talk and a lot of sharing of articles and research, but I've believed for a while now that if we want to have freedom in our lifetimes, then we have to go out and create that freedom. We have to live free. We have to build infrastructure and institutions that are decentralized, mutual aid, mutual defense, our own alternative economies, counter economies. So there's never been a better time than now to do all of that.
Well, no, absolutely, because right now, I think all of those things are as exposed and as raw as they have ever been, certainly in our own time, and people are looking at the sort of fraud here around every single corner, and the manipulations of government, and now it's a race. I think, well, isn't it always? It's a race between tyranny and freedom.
Yep, you can look at the lens of history as a struggle between those who want to control people and those who just want to be left alone to live their life. And yeah, the institutions and literally the infrastructure, like we saw here in Texas, are failing. They're failing us en masse, and I think that we deserve better as human beings.
And I think that we can produce better as human beings when we don't have the manipulation, the political and social manipulation that it really underlines everything that is sort of so-called society today. It's really sort of underground to be a free-thinking individual. It's almost like it's a secret.
Yeah. Well, we're trying to be loud and proud about it so we can turn people on to these ideas and show people that there's a better way to live.
You're doing that in a lot of different ways. I really don't even know where to begin. Maybe just ask a little bit about yourself and just how you even come to find yourself doing something like taking the chance and taking your family, you're a family man, you're married, you have children, across the nation in a van, relying on Bitcoining and your connections across the social media and the people that you've met to be able to survive and prove that idea.
Yep, that was a lot of fun, and we actually toured in our van the first time around, and then the subsequent times we were in a converted school bus, so that was super cool. The mother of my kids, she's now my ex-wife, but she still has the school bus and still uses it, so that's awesome. And interestingly enough, it was difficult back then to lay the groundwork and to show to people that you can use cryptocurrency in your day-to-day life. So these cross-country road trips we would do, we would use cryptocurrency only, and we would stop at restaurants and stores that accepted cryptocurrency. And for the ones that didn't, there were services like eGifter or Gift.com, G-Y-F-T. They're still around to this day, where you can buy gift cards with cryptocurrency. Then on some of the later tours, we managed to get a Bitcoin debit card where you send Bitcoin to an address, and then when you use the debit card, it converts it to crypto. But the thing is now, many people aren't aware of this if you don't actually use Bitcoin, but there's actually been quite a few scaling problems with Bitcoin to where when you want to send a transaction, whether it's $20,000 or $20, there's a transaction fee that goes along with it. It's a great free market instrument that is really the free market in action. You kind of bid a transaction fee to get included in the next block on the blockchain. Well, those transaction fees are anywhere between $5, $10, $12 these days because so many people are trying to use cryptocurrency. So that was a big controversy as Bitcoin grew. That's why you have Bitcoin Cash. They forked away from the Bitcoin blockchain and created, it had the old same history of the blockchain, but now they have a cryptocurrency called Bitcoin Cash that has a bigger block size, so you can fit more transactions in each little block on the blockchain, and you can use that like cash or money with little to no transaction fee. But I was just thinking that when you were saying that, like, yeah, we were trying to prove that Bitcoin worked as a currency back then, and I think we contributed to that body of work. But nowadays, with the scaling problems, you can't even use it to buy a cup of coffee, which is something that we would always encourage people to be excited about back in the day. Just throwing that out there. I still like Bitcoin.
No, it's amazing. Thank you for doing that, because your proof of concept, you're somebody who can say with absolute certainty the value of Bitcoin, not just in the sense of you can go, oh, 51,000 this week. Ooh, no, but in the actual functional use of it in the marketplace. And so I appreciate that you recognize that. I think that's important, because I think there are a lot of people out there that are schlocking Bitcoin, as it were, on the sort of old promises that don't exist anymore. You brought that up. It's funny you did that, because I was just playing around trying a new wallet, and bought $20 worth, and it cost me $30 to buy it, and it took, I don't know, a week and a half or something, even at those high volatile numbers like it has over the past 2 weeks or so and more, to get back the investment that it took just to buy the Bitcoin. So yeah, that's always been one of those hurdles, but it's something that'll be overcome, and it's something that I think is not that important in the bigger picture, because you've proven the functional use of it. These other things, the market price of it will change with the market as the market grows.
Yeah, and there's a multitude of different cryptocurrencies out there that have different values and utilities and use cases. So it's really cool to see the ecosystem grow. And now there's like 1.5 trillion or some crazy amount of money and value in the cryptocurrency space overall, $1.8 trillion. So I think it's definitely something that's here to stay.
Yeah, yeah, and that's good. It's technology. It's technology to facilitate exchange and to do more things. That's what's great about it. The deeper you get into it, and the more people look at it as trying to use the blockchain in some functional way in reality, the more you find a Bitcoin or digital currencies like it being tied to functional things in reality. Electricity or manpower, time, things that exist that are more tangible, which helps soothe people like myself, economists, if you will, like myself, who have always, from the get-go, and always will have a problem with any sort of a thing that's called money when it's really a currency. Just simply knowing that minor difference in the ability to use it for something other than to facilitate an exchange.
Yep, and I think really the beauty of cryptocurrency is decentralization. Yeah. And not having to rely on centralized third parties or trust third parties, whether it's a company, a bank, a central bank, or a government. I think really that's the wave of the future, and it's one I've always been optimistic about freedom and liberty, but this is one of the reasons why I feel optimistic that we will be able to find freedom in our lifetimes. I mean, we have a lot of freedom already.
Yeah, it's just one more thing, right? And it's one of the big ones. You must know, as an activist, if you've been around the nation, you talk to different people who come to liberty activism from different places and different angles. But one of the main places that we pretty much all agree is that there is a central fraud that exists in the and the financing of this government and this nation and the planet, really. The central banks, the Federal Reserve, the manipulations of the currency. This is something that you run up to in our circles all the time, and well understood.
Yep, and I think the important thing is for people to focus less on the problem and more on the solutions. And I realized this after the Ron Paul for President campaign in 2008, that there are so many of us out there that all we really need to do is get organized, and we can really do some cool stuff. And we don't have to wait for politicians to do the right thing or for the general public to catch up and do the right thing.
No, we just have to keep doing what we're doing, which is that voluntary existence that already exists. It's everywhere. It's all around us every second of every day. People just getting along and doing what needs to be done to move forward, not only in their lives, but as a society. And we do it without that thought or that consideration for what any authority has to say about it. I mean, that's the core premise of this entire exercise of the show itself, and getting a chance to come and chat with people like yourself about the things that you do. And you host a show too, Live Free Now, with John Bush. How's that going?
It's going great. Yeah, we're growing in subscribership, and I try to do 1 or 2 a week. People can listen at livefreenow.show, and we talk about entrepreneurship, self-improvement. I try to motivate people to take action in their personal lives and their family lives, and to feel the confidence and the belief that we can really create a better world.
It sounds like such an easy sell, but it's not, is it? People, we have connotative problems, we have PR problems. This is anarchists, voluntarists, libertarians, all of us across the board, just like anybody else. But it seems like ours get some extra spotlight shown on them because they're not the mainstream.
Yeah, and I try not to think too much or worry too much about what the masses might think. The masses, the general public who kind of just go along to get along, and by all means, more power to them, right? Maybe they're more blissful. Ignorance is bliss, right? But the masses never really change the course of history. They just follow the prevailing trends. And so I try not to worry too much about what people think about libertarians or anarchists or cryptocurrency or whatever, although the masses are hopping on board the cryptocurrency train now en masse, it seems. And really what I focus on is organizing the remnant, which are those pieces, that the people that are going to pick up the pieces of society and rebuild when it collapses. I think that's where a lot of our energy and focus ought to go. And that's organizing with like-minded people, getting together, building gardens, joining the Freedom Cell Network, building community, getting into decentralized technologies, pulling kids out of government school. Really, that's where it's at. And I think there's enough of us that are of like mind where if we just get organized and we leverage our strength in numbers, then hopefully, essentially, we can just ignore the powers that be. I mean, they're not going to let us go so easily, but if there's enough people that are just like, we're not contributing to your system anymore, we're doing our own thing, and then maybe we can create a vehicle that's attractive enough to where the masses are like, wow, what are those guys doing? They seem healthy, they seem happy, their kids are intelligent and speak freely, and they got cool eco communities and futuristic sovereign cities. I want to go do what they're doing.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation because you're always the idea of any of these things is to reach, any of these conversations that we have or these papers that we write or these businesses that we start. Any of these things is ultimately is to reach people, and so you have to put yourself in their shoes and listen. And you have to put yourself more in their head. I think that's the more important thing, and look and see through their eyes at what they're seeing from the liberty community, the freedom community, and try to gauge what it is that shines through when we when we're at our best, when the message is coming across clearly. It's Dr. Paul says that it's a perfect message, and we're imperfect messengers, and so the trick is for us to concentrate, I think, on those things that really that spotlight it, and that's why when I think about it, I go and I'd say, all right, what is it that the other person is thinking about? What is it that I'm missing that I think I see it? I'm watching what's going on. I'm paying attention. I'm in the moment. I'm now, but it's still not that guy's now. What's his now? What's that pointing to? And I think we're reaching a point where more and more people are starting to get that view and starting to realize that it's not that we are all in this together, even though we're not all in that same boat, sort of thing. We're got to go into a commercial. We'll come back and we'll talk some more with John Bush. Go to towardanarchy.com. Look for February 21st. You can find John's Live Free Now podcast and broadcast there, as well as a free ounce of Kratom.com. We'll have to check out what that's all about when we get back. Okay, so there's about a million things that are going through my head, questions I want to ask John, because there's just all these different areas and things that he's touched on and people that he's worked with and things that he's done that it could just pick his brain all day. But there was one thing in particular when you sent back some links to me. You had that free ounce of Kratom.com thing, and so it's a subject I'm ignorant of. And this is a short segment. I don't want to harp on it, but I'd like to know a little bit about Kratom, and based on that link that you sent me, you might be the person to ask.
Yeah, sure. Kratom is a member of the coffee family. It's made from the powderized leaves of the Kratom evergreen tree. It's been used for hundreds, if not thousands of years in Southeast Asia as kind of a folk remedy. A lot of day laborers would use it in the fields when they would start feeling fatigued to give them an extra boost. It was also used to help people get off of opium addiction in Thailand and Southeast Asia. In the West, it's really popular. So essentially, it's like a powder. You mix it with tea or water or juice, or you can take it in capsule form. And a lot of people in the States are using it for pain and relaxation and help with sleep. That's specifically the red varieties. There's also white varieties that are a little more uplifting and energetic, good for focus, motivation. They're good if you don't want to drink. Like my girlfriend, for example, she quit drinking. She's been a year sober now, and Kratom really helped. It also helped her to quit Adderall, which essentially is like legalized meth. And her brain would like race around. She was diagnosed with ADHD, and although I don't really believe much in that kind of disorder thing, I think people just are different. But it really helped her to focus and not feel overwhelmed with tasks. And then there's green varieties, which are kind of in the middle. They're really good for stress and anxiety. They have some mild euphoria to them. All of it feels good. It doesn't get you high like cannabis per se, but it does feel good, and it helps to take the edge off. And a lot of people are utilizing Kratom instead of prescription pain medicine or anxiety medicine or depression medicine. And yeah, it has little to no side effects. If you take a whole lot of it and you take it every day for months on end, your body can become dependent on it to where you feel discomfort when you stop taking it. Similar to caffeine, though. If someone's drinking caffeine every day or coffee every day, they get a headache or feel kind of whack as well. So it's just a great tool that, when used responsibly, can really provide a lot of benefits for people, and it's totally natural. It's literally just raw plant powder from the leaves of this amazing Kratom evergreen tree. And if your customers, or sorry, if your listeners want to give it a try, we actually have a free ounce offer. You can go to freeounceofkratom.com. That's freeounceofkratom.com.
That's awesome. Thank you, John. I really appreciate you telling me about that, because it is a subject that I was not aware of. I didn't have any knowledge on, so I appreciate you filling me in on that. We're going to go into the top of the hour here, but we'll come back and we're going to talk to John about the Great Reset, and he already mentioned the Freedom Cells Network. We'll find out what some of these things are when we get back on Toward Anarchy.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.
Okay, we are off into hour number 2. It is Toward Anarchy. Go to towardanarchy.com. Look for February 21st. You see my guest is John Bush. We've been talking about a number of different things, but one of the things that I really wanted to talk to him about is specifically some of the activism that he's been involved in recently, and in conjunction with, in question with, because it's another one of these areas that I lack some knowledge. I have this understanding. I think that everybody gets it, and we hear some words like the Great Reset, and we hear that this is going on and that this is taking place right now, and some of us understand it maybe a little better than others, but then you hear, oh, there's a greater reset going on, and that there are people who are getting together all around the nation, and they're working to build networks for freedom and liberty, and that these people are purposely working together to build community and to sort of maybe even counter this political, this New World Order driven, some people believe, Great Reset that's occurring. So it was really great when John agreed to come on the show, because then this is one of these people, then I could actually ask about some of this and potentially even believe what they're saying. That's so hard to do with so many voices out there, and so you reach that Poe's Law thing where you hear or see something on the internet and you just, without context, you just have no idea. And that's where my knowledge right now of the Great Reset and the things surrounding it and the work that John is doing with the Freedom Cells Network, and that's where I sit, and I think a lot of people probably do too. So I have to ask you about it, John. What is the Great Reset? And then tell me about these things that you're involved in with Derek Bros and other great activists to kind of counter it, I guess.
Okay. So the Great Reset essentially is like a marketing campaign that's being put forward by the World Economic Forum, which is a group of oligarchs and elites, superclass folks. They meet once a year in Davos, Switzerland, although this year their meeting was virtual. And essentially the Great Reset aims to reshape society, government, business, and finance. They want to further centralize power and authority in the hands of the few at the expense of the many. They want to reshape capitalism and market economies as we know them. not that we have free markets now, but they definitely want to move things more towards a command and control system. They want to move away from profit as a motivator and shareholders' profit as a motivation for businesses and corporations towards what they call stakeholder capitalism, where they insist that businesses and enterprises pay attention to the needs of every single quote-unquote stakeholder in a community. Really, what they want to do is implement Agenda 21, which is now Agenda 2030, or the Sustainable Development Goals. That's what they want to make the highest ethos, or what people value in business, away from profit and money, and even fulfilling customer needs as a priority, and towards these Sustainable Development Goals. A big part of it's called the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which is this term invented by Klaus Schwab. He's the guy leading up the World Economic Forum, and he's the chief architect of this Great Reset marketing plan. Essentially, it's a marketing plan for New World Order 2.0. There's always been a quest to create a totalitarian government, and it's been difficult because of nation states, because of a lack of resources. Well, now the technology exists through artificial intelligence, tracking, tracing, surveillance, smartphones, where they want to merge technology with all of biology. That's what the Fourth Industrial Revolution means. Not just human beings, but, for example, Bill Gates' Microsoft has this planetary computer idea where they want to track and trace all biodiversity, catalog it all, and trace its progress or its diminishing values or whatever. I don't know. It's crazy nuts. Essentially, what they want to do is control just about everything. And there's all sorts of strange finance mechanisms in place, and world leaders are on board with it. Businesses and mega corporations are on board with it. And what we're calling for, they held a virtual meeting a month ago or so, and we wanted to counter it. And we didn't want to counter it traditionally, the websites and articles and blogosphere and, the Patriot and Truther community just obsesses over what they're talking about and tries to decode whatever's taking place. We wanted to create an environment, an opportunity for people to focus on solutions more. So to counter the Great Reset, we launched the Greater Reset. And instead of calling for greater centralization and a shift in business and economics, we are calling for decentralization. They're using COVID-19 and environmental problems and poverty as the big motivators and drives for their stuff. Well, when it comes to the environment, rather than having cap and trade and carbon taxes and tracking everything, we want to encourage people to learn about permaculture and regenerative agriculture and growing your own food or linking up with local food supply chains. When it comes to business, rather than further centralizing things, we want to decentralize things and encourage agoras and open-air markets and counter-economies and resilient networks of like-minded people trading amongst one another. We did a lot on community. We talked about the Freedom Cell Network, which we can talk about. We talked about how decentralized technologies can be utilized in order to maintain social cohesion, exchange value, come up with rules for social organization. And yeah, it was a great day. We had Jack Spirko, Marjorie Wildcraft, Christian Westbrook, Ice Age Farmer. We had James Corbett, who's amazing. And a lot of people. We had over 100,000 people go through the website during the live stream. We streamed it over 6 different days. People can go to thegreaterreset.org, thegreaterreset.org, and they can watch all the replays. It was totally free, and a lot of people got a lot of value. So the idea, again, was not to necessarily focus on the problem and the Great Reset and what the oligarchs are doing, but present a viable alternative focused on solutions that people can utilize in order to find more freedom in their lifetime.
That's great, because I think that you've said that word quite a few times already in the conversation, solutions and working for solutions. And I think that's important. I think that's a lot of the reason that I do this is because I want to have these conversations with people like yourself who are doing such things, because I believe that they are viable solutions that other people need to hear about, and they need to hear that they're working, and that thousands of people are tuning in at a time to participate in events like this, that they don't have to feel like they're the only person. With COVID and the fact that people have been locked down, this is something that a lot of people are experiencing right now. This is fear and feeling alone and sort of isolated. And I think now is a perfect time to let people know that they're not out there. They're not the only one who thinks this way or feels this way, and that there are some things that we can do about it, and that there are people doing something about it as we speak.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of people, and we just need to unite and connect and get together. And like I said, focus less on the problem and just doing stuff. There's so much chatter and division, and there's less time to argue with people and to get upset and to fret over things when we're like busy with our hands in the garden, or we're homeschooling our kids, or we're hosting a potluck dinner at our homes.
Yeah. Let's be, and of course we have to have the conversation. It's not about this idea that we need to stop talking right now and just drop everything we're doing and run outside and go do something else because what you're doing isn't right. That's not what we're talking about at all. The idea before everyone is to find their thing and to concentrate on their thing and to grow it, and at the same time somehow I think the key is, I hope that it is that we find somehow to work that into a working community, that we find a way that we're not just making ourselves happy, but that we're actually helping produce greater community around us. And I think a lot of people, especially right now, feel like that's not happening for them, that they're just another cog in the machine, and this is that opportunity right now that they can break out of it, and they need to know how and where to get together and come together with people, and that's what the Freedom Cells Network thing is about, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. And yeah, we definitely don't want to be naive to the problem. I like, when I study the problem and what's taking place and, government plans, I like to study it in the context of coming up with strategies. So how can I better understand what's taking place, what's being rolled out, so I can more effectively navigate what's to come and insulate myself from it. But yeah, the Freedom Cell Network, man, we've been growing by leaps and bounds. This was an idea I came up with in 2014, and I had a little group of my own. Kind of fell apart due to some infighting, but I learned a lot from that. And Derek Bros, the idea really resonated with him. I kind of leaned back into entrepreneurship and focused on my family, and Derek really spread the idea, turned it into a global network. Before COVID popped off, there was around 1,000 people on the website. And then with everything taking place with COVID and everyone really seeing that this agenda and these plans are accelerated immensely with all the lockdowns and all the crazy stuff going on in the contact tracing, the website had a 10x growth in registered users and people participating in the Freedom Cell Network. So there was 10,000 people, and then it kept on growing and growing, and the Greater Reset really attracted a lot of people. Now we have over 18,000 people that are participating in the Freedom Cell Network globally. So essentially what it is a network, a community of like-minded individuals and families that are working together for the purpose of mutual aid, mutual defense, and achieving common goals. And it all centers around an inner cadre group, which is a group of approximately 8 people that you get together with. We chose the number 8 because there's research by this guy, John David Garcia, shows that 8 people is the optimal number of people for maximum creativity of the group. If you have fewer people, there's fewer ideas, fewer ability to get things implemented. If you have more people, it starts to get bureaucratic and people can't agree on things. So you try to have close to 8 people as possible. It doesn't have to be exactly 8. And then you do cool stuff together. You build gardens together, you set goals, you do food storage, do bulk food storage buys or bulk ammunition buys. You go to the gun range together, you help each other out in times of emergency like we saw here in Texas. And then you link up with other inter-cadre groups, right? Or maybe you already have an existing Patriot or Freedom group. You already have like 30 people. You could try to break down into smaller groups. You maintain the cohesion of the bigger group, but you get more nitty-gritty and in-depth, and you rely more on the smaller inter-cadre groups. So you have a middle cadre group. Maybe this is spread across the city. It's comprised of 8 inter-cadre groups. And then the middle cadre groups that are more local and regional, they link up with other middle cadre groups to form what we call meta-cadres. So this is like 8 groups of 64. At the end of the day, this structure, as we grow, it's not what's really important is finding other people that are like-minded. But as our network grows, there is a benefit in this organizational structure in that we can scale exponentially the number of people participating, and the network remains horizontal. So when organizing, whether it's business or activist movements, or governance, social organization, you can have vertical institutions that are hierarchical, there's bureaucracy, there's control, right? Or you can have horizontal organizations like a cooperative or a decentralized network. And so the cool thing about this structure is that you scale and it remains horizontal. It never takes on a hierarchical nature. And there's mechanisms where we can make decisions en masse, where we can have funds for our inner cadre, or we can have funds for our middle cadre, and then decisions are made through consensus on how to spend this money. Maybe we should buy a property together to do intentional communities. Maybe eventually our numbers are big enough, people contribute, and we have our own private security force to protect us from private criminals and public criminals alike. So there really is a lot of potential. And like I said, we already have over 18,000 people participating all across the globe. And a lot of people are gaining a lot of value and a lot of community and support from it.
Well, I'm going to say I like the idea of 8 because it makes great numbers and it works with chess, but not just for those reasons. I've been with freedom activist groups before, and there was always this core that drove everything, and it was sort of 8 people. And when you get to 12, apparently one of them's working for the other guys anyway. So I believe that was the number. In every 12 people, that one of them is he's turned. I don't know if that's really true or not, obviously, but somebody somewhere came up with a number, and it's as good as any. So that's great. I think that's really cool. It's sort of decentralized, horizontal scale, interesting words and language that you can use. But the point is that everybody is contributing at an equal level, and you're doing so by keeping the scaling not growing up but out, I guess, is the best way to look at it.
Yeah, for sure. Nobody has control over other people. Nobody has authority over anyone else. And like I was saying, really at the end of the day, it's you go to freedomcells.org. You can register for the website. We have like a private social media site, although we try to encourage people not to use it for posting articles and stuff, but people do that. Really, it's a tool to find other people. So you sign up on the site, you put what skills you have, what you have to offer, how you can add value, and then you put yourself on a map. So we encourage you not to use your home address. Use a park down the street or a local coffee shop, for example. And then when you go to the map, you can view people that are in your area. So a lot of people are like, oh, man, I feel all alone. I don't have anyone in my community that thinks like I do. Well, you might be surprised, especially if you live in a mid to large-sized city. You put your little pin there on the map, and you can find people or even existing cell groups in your area. So it's just all about organizing people that know there's a problem and are ready and willing to do something about it, to build. And the strategy isn't let's all turn into a political party or a voting bloc. The strategy is to exit and build. Let's go ahead and start building and experimenting with alternative forms of economic systems, of food production systems, of social governance systems, And let's just go ahead and do something better right now. Let's not wait for the system to collapse or wait for, another Ron Paul to come along. Let's take power into our own hands and do something better now, right? The expression for the Great Reset is build back better, right? Well, that's what we want to do too. We don't want to go back to the old way of doing things. We don't want this new normal where everyone's separate and everyone's all dependent on pharmaceuticals and vaccines, right? But we don't want the old normal either, where it was all hierarchical, drug war, foreign wars, income tax, Federal Reserve Bank, debasement of the currency. We want a new normal as well, but one that's based on peace and freedom and voluntarism. And so we got to build it and show people that it works. I don't see what other option there is at the end of the day. The political system's operating exactly as it was intended to do. It's designed to benefit those in power and for them to enrich themselves and to maintain power and grow power. That's exactly what's taking place. So we got to do something better.
Well,
let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get it done. We got to go into the break. That means that we're running out of time on this thing. We'll come back and we'll wrap it up with John Bush here on Toward Anarchy. Well, this is the thing, that when you're in these groups and you're out there and you're an activist, and you're not just somebody, not that there's anything wrong necessarily with just being somebody who's sitting behind a computer and sharing information and doing your thing, but there's also something that comes with getting together with people on a sort of weekly basis or a regular basis and meeting with them and working to actually provide in your community and to make changes within your community and to build everything from gardens. It's really a wonderful thing. I participated in different versions of this in different places, and we feed people in our community, and we create fellowship, and we have meetings that we come together and we discuss the things that are troubles for us that we're trying to overcome. Everything from political ideology down to our everyday struggles with our families. And this is just something that I think maybe the average person who doesn't participate in church regularly or something along those lines, some voluntary group like that maybe they just don't realize is really happening out there. And so I appreciate all the work that you've done, John, over the years to create such things and make things a reality. It's great, and it's been wonderful to watch over the years, just the response and all of the things that have happened and the different people that have popped up and participate. And it's just it makes the old heart warm when it's really, really cold outside.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I guess I'm kind of hammering on the whole sharing stuff online meme, and I mean, people are free to do whatever they want, but if people in our community, whether it's liberty, patriot, truth community, whatever, crypto community, we all have goals. I mean, we all have a certain way that we'd like to see the world. We're not satisfied with the status quo. We're not satisfied with tyranny. We're not satisfied with this crazy technocracy, new world, this new form of tyranny that's coming into play. And at the end of the day, like if you're motivated, if you want to see change, we have, not to be cliche, we have to go out there and be the change. So we're trying to encourage people to engage in activism that can accelerate the path to freedom.
And it really does work, and that's what's great about what you're talking about here. I mean, there's no big secret. It's all just about really getting out there and doing something. And here's the thing: is that this is going on whether you participate or not. You should find your thing. That's what I think is great about the Freedom Cells Network stuff, where you're talking about sort of being able to kind of put an online resume out there and the sort of things that you can help provide for your little group, and you can work together with other people to. Everybody needs the thing. and needs to know that they can find some use in it, and all that much better if you can help build community. So I think it's great what yourself and Derek and others are doing out there, and other people need to hear that it's working and that they're not the only ones that are doing it, because I know this last year and more it's been hell on freedom fighters, because we've watched tyranny just reign supreme.
Yep. Yeah, and things are definitely accelerating, but there's this crazy paradox that happens as they try to clamp down and control more people. There's more people that rise up and want to change the way that they live.
I've been very clear about this a lot lately. I'm glad that you said that, because it's the Star Wars reference. The more the tighter you squeeze your grip, the more systems will slip through your fingers, and that's that's what we're experiencing now, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know if it was that same scene, but I always thought it was interesting how like this council is talking in one of the big what do you call them? Not starships. One of the big Empire ships, and they're like, the Senate will never go for this, and they're like, forget about the Senate. We've installed 10 regional governors to manage the Empire, and that's exactly what they're trying to do with these FEMA regions, and kind of break things apart. One thing, a good insight about this whole Great Reset phenomenon is they want to do away with like state governments and have things be more governed and managed by these regional bodies, right? All the way, they want to do the same thing with nation states as well. And so, I think there's not a lot of hope in pushing back at the federal level or on that big mega level, but rather in a decentralized way. Like we all just start doing our thing and decoupling and getting out of the smart cities and building a better way to do community.
I think that's perfect, and I think that's good, because that's where we're going to have to leave it. John, it's been a real pleasure talking with you, my friend. Thank you so much for taking the time. You take care, and I will talk to you again soon.
Hey, thanks again for having me. You take care.
You bet, anytime. I'll be back on Toward Anarchy.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
We'll go to towardanarchy.com. You will be able to follow along. That's really where it all begins, right there, towardanarchy.com. I spend a lot of time just hanging around at towardanarchy.com, playing with the pages, not trying to tweak it too much and get lost in the never-ending sort of ADD that I have when it comes to organization and making things perfect, and that could be better, and that could be, and I can't do that. I have to cut myself off before I get to that point. But I do definitely spend a lot of time there, just trying to make sure that everything is as easy as possible to just boom, one click or 2 clicks and you're where you need to be. A couple clicks, you can be listening to the show, whether it's the archive or whether it's the live broadcast with you. You're actually live with me right now. Or just a couple of clicks away to buying a T-shirt to help support the show. I've made them as dirt cheap as I possibly can. I went back through the store, and actually, I replaced the store this past week. It's one of the things that I did. It didn't appear like a real store before when you clicked on it. If you click on the little flashing T-shirt at towardanarchy.com there, and then click on the store, it'll pull it up, and it actually looks like a little store now. Before, it was more like just an order form where you just drop some stuff in. But this actually kind of gives you an image of each of the different products, and where I was noticing this, I have to fix that, I guess. I have to change that around because it just seems backwards to me. The socks, they say Toward Anarchy, but the arrow, it seems like it's pointing in the wrong direction. It's pointing up the leg, and it should be pointing out toward, like you're walking toward it, right? So it should be pointing the other direction. It gives you the images, and you can see, get an idea what the product you would be buying, because there's a couple of different things. There's a hoodie, and there's a bag, and there's the little cash pouch, a little accessory pouch, pencil pouch, something like that. A few different things, and I've just tried to trim them all the way down to where I make just a few bucks on them, so that they're just the basic cost to pay for the shirt, and then you have to pay some other fee to get it shipped to you, of course, and of course you have to wait months and months for it to ship, because if it's like the title for my daughter's car that shipped from 10 minutes down the road to Kansas City, and then 2 weeks later came to me here at the house. Yeah, I've had a couple of things like that happen to me here in the COVID era. In the last few months, it happened to my selection of graded comic books that had just come in not too long ago. That was lost in the mail for a month. That thing was out there, but everything has come. If I've actually created some level of fear now to keep you from actually buying one of the shirts, that it may never arrive, they actually all do show. I didn't lose anything. I even ordered stuff from China during COVID. I had some stuff come from Wish. No, I don't. I'm not. I buy things where I buy things. I don't have a problem with. I've never been afraid to buy stuff on the internet. I hear people talk about Wish, or they even talk about eBay or Craigslist, or they talk about these nightmares of doing business in the digital world, and I have no idea what they're talking about. I've met people all over the nation and all over the world on the internet and done business with them, selling collectibles and selling all sorts of things. I'm kind of like a junker in that sense. I'm a flea market guy. I was raised in the flea market. I go to the secondhand stores all the time, and so I have a general understanding of the value of just about any given thing. And so if I see something and I think there's some value in it, and I can buy it and turn it over for some profit, I'll do it. And I buy stuff online and I sell stuff online all the time. And I've had a problem or two. I've lost $1 or $2 here and there, but it was my own dumb actions that did. It's wanting something to be true. It's too good to be true, and I just, you know what, it's $20. I'm just going to do it, and if I lose $20, I lose $20. But if it shows up, then I'll be super happy. The reality is that if you do your research online when you're buying stuff and who you're buying it from, barring it's sort of act of God sort of thing, you're just dealing with normal people like yourself, and you generally intend to do what you say. Yeah, well, you deserve that. But it wouldn't have been nice, though. Boy, wouldn't that have been nice. Something delivered right to the door. There's some things that, yeah, it would be nice if you could have it just delivered to you all the time, but instead you have to meet somebody in an alley or parking lot somewhere, and it's just what are you going to do? Go to towardanarchy.com, and that's the place to follow along, share everything from there. All the links, everything that John and I talked about, can all be reached from there one way or another. You can follow John on the show, and then, of course, look up the Freedom Cells Network. I had shared the link for the Freedom Cells, but it had been down. You should see it. freedomcells.org is all it is, and it had been down. Okay, it looks like they're back up. That's cool. They had some problems, I think, maybe a denial of service attack, but it seems like they're fine now. But yeah, that's all. It looks like you can sign up if you're interested in what John and I were talking about, and that idea of trying to find and create community in your area. You just go sign up for it. There's no obligation or anything like that. It's just I thought he put it well when he said that it was like a social network and that people used it to post stories and things like that, but that it was more about the actual finding people in your areas. Put that pin in the coffee shop down the street, and maybe you just start meeting some people. It may sound a little scary because you're using the internet, but it's it's literally tied into what I was just talking about in understanding what it is and who you're dealing with. And it's not that hard to figure that out, and it's no worse than meeting people in real life and having to invest that time. And in fact, the thought is that by these groups coming together already in this place on the internet, that you will already find them ready and accepting of you and what you want to do. That you won't have to go through that weeding out process that you have to go through in real life. It's tough. You spend a lot of time building relationships with someone that you have what you think are things in common with them, only to over time find out that those are not, that they're only a superficial commonality that you have between you. And building friendships can be tough. Why not eliminate that barrier, I guess, as it were, and just jump right into a place where people are already saying, I'm of a like mind, I have freedom in mind, I have gardens in mind, I have community in mind, but it's voluntary community. It's not, go to that place and sign up and jump in and participate. And it's what I was talking about earlier about the amount of good that's being done in sort of social media and social places and social gatherings on the internet, and that there shouldn't be this stigma any more than there is in any other facet of life. There's that episode of South Park. It's one of my favorites where at one point, I think it's Stan and Cartman, and they're at a computer and they're going through sort of a Snapchat thing or something like that. One of those programs where you just, like a chat roulette. I think that's actually what it is chat roulette that they're doing. And if you've never experienced anything like that, it's just, you throw on your camera and your microphone and you just randomly end up chatting with people, and it can be sexual and it can be whatever you want it to be depending on who you find and what you want to talk to. But the point is that he's talking about, so they're trying to find friends and people in common, and every time they find somebody, it's just some guy who's sort of manipulating himself, and oh no, that's just another guy. No, just another guy, and oh no, he's pulling that out. No, we can't. No, just another guy, and it's sort of giving up on it, and this is a waste of time. And Cartman says, this is just like real life. You got to kind of wade through the dicks to get to the good people in life. It's this is one of those things where you can sort of do that. You can just sort of okay, I don't want one of those. No, don't need that, and just sort of make your decisions and find some like-minded people and get out there and just be who you are. Come as you are kind of thing. That's why I brought up the thing about church and people who already have a fellowship. I think there are a lot of people who don't have a fellowship, or the fellowship is it's based on something other than the individuals. It's based on a group ideology. It's based on a fun thing. There are so many different groups. I hesitate to, or even be able to come up with just any sort of specific example. There are just so many voluntary ways that you can come together and sort of try to express yourself and do your thing. But this is different because it's about continuing to create that decentralized, horizontal, scaling community thing that he was talking about. It was kind of neat, and I was serious when I meant that I liked the numbers, because I've been in groups like that, and we planted gardens around the city. We had multiple gardens around the city, and we helped feed people, and we would get together on a weekly basis, and we would have activities and actions, and we would go out on the street, and we would hold signs, and we would hand out flyers, and we'd hand out CDs, and we'd do all of these things that were a little less than what we're really talking about now, and this is why I moved away from it, and we all did. You've heard some of the conversations that I've had with some of my friends from that time period and the things that we were doing, and we've all moved away from that because it was centered on so much about sort of trying to wake people up as opposed to actually centered on the things like creating the gardens and stuff like that was always secondary. It was always about what do we do, how do we get out on the street, and how do we wake more people up, and that ultimately collapsed. That didn't work. But the things that kept going, the things that people held on to, the gardens and the community, that sort of stuff. And now it's all come full circle again, and all those people are active again, all thinking along these same sort of lines. And we have one of the greatest opportunities right now, I think, greater than we've had in a long, long time, maybe since, I don't know, Great Depression or sometime around then, where people are really concerned about what is happening with the future and who is in control of it, and it's unfortunate that it has to manifest itself so often in political aspirations, people sort of trying to run for office and things like that, as opposed to just build community and continue, because that other system, that other thing that we were talking about, that we all discussed and we were all fighting against at the time, it was going to continue to grow, and that there was nothing we could do about that. But what was missing was the building our own thing, and it took a little while for that to come back around. Skip past all that and just go sign up now online to find a place to be able to do that, where they're already focused on that. I had to. There's this great thing. I haven't talked at all about anything of just sort of fun and entertainment that I've done lately, because I haven't been going to the Red Box. I haven't gone anywhere. It's one of the problems with COVID, and I said it would happen when COVID started, is that what'll happen is I'll just stop going places, and I have stopped going places, and so I haven't had any sort of weird entertainment or fun found things out there to talk about, except that this past week on Disney Plus they put the Muppet Show on there, and I remember that from being a kid. I grew up watching the Muppet Show, and it was really great watching it again, but it only took 3 episodes before they had a disclaimer on it. They had to put up this racial sensitivity, Disney's blah, 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 doing this, that, and the other thing. But they did, to their credit, they didn't axe the episode from it. And so I'm watching the episode a little closer, and it's Rolf the dog, and it's the scene. If you don't know the Muppet Show, the original Muppet Show, you won't know what I'm talking about. But they did these scenes almost every episode where it was sort of ballroom dancing, and the dancers were talking to each other, and it was one-liner, two-liner jokes. And Rolf says something about he's sick, he has the Asian flu, and right there, totally offensive. But his whoever he's dancing with asks, well, what do you do? Is he, well, I went to the doctor, and he subscribed 2 fortune cookies. He said, take 2 fortune cookies and call me in the morning. Something along those lines. But it was all just over that. They got that warning. It's just this warning that it was coming, as opposed to it just being another joke inside, and probably nobody really noticing. It says a lot about our culture. But like I said, to their credit, they didn't pull it. Okay, so I haven't worked it out exactly. I'm not all the details are in place yet. It sounds like J.B. Brown can't make it next weekend, so he will move him to the 7th. And so on the 28th, I haven't confirmed with him yet, but I believe it will be Dr. Eric Smith. He is the Associate Professor of Rhetoric at the York College of Pennsylvania, also Associate Director of the Institute for Civic Arts and Humanities, and previously the chair of the York, Pennsylvania, not New York, York, Pennsylvania, YWCA Racial and Social Justice Community. But doesn't that sound like it's right up my alley? No, go roll that back just a little bit. Associate Professor of Rhetoric. And of course, rhetoric is the art or study of the use of language effectively and persuasively. So isn't that what I do here? Isn't that something I talk about all the time? He wrote this fantastic article here this last week that was on Newsweek.com about classic liberalism and the schism that the notion creates within black communities, within the black culture. And I would say, oh, it's really cool. I think I want to talk to this guy. And then I saw that he was this doctor, associate professor of rhetoric, and I thought, oh wow, that's just totally my thing, right? we have to talk to this guy. We have to bring this guy on the show, and he's agreed to be on the show. I'm just not certain of if it will be next week, but I think it will be because the only reason I wasn't sure is because I was still working out with Jamie Brown if he could make next week, but it doesn't sound like he'll be able to. That was the email last night, and so I just need to confirm. But we should expect to talk to Eric Smith next week, and that'll be a fun conversation, as all of these conversations are. I didn't give it a chance. I'll do it. I'll do it right now. Anybody will give away a copy of this Economics in One Lesson. We'll just take the fifth caller, and I'll just have producer Ken get your information, and it'll go fast. So you just. I don't know what to say. Oh gosh, why do I always do that? I never actually just pull the information up and have it in front of me so that you can, why not have the number? It's 800-313-9443. I should just remember it off the top of my head. 800-313-9443. This is only for live people listening on the network. You will get a copy of Economics in One Lesson, hardbound, $20 book for free. You have to read this, and then you have to give it to somebody else and let them read it and pass it along. That's the way this thing works. He'll take the fifth caller, and he'll give me your information. I'll mail it out to you this week. Thanks so much. We'll check in next week with me with Dr. Eric Smith here. So then you take care.